So, we're going to talk about women's hormonal stages through the years, really as an adult. And it really is about three stages. So, let's start with the first stage, which is from puberty through the reproductive years. And this is when we have periods and we have ovulation. And this is the time in our life, as we know, that we have menstrual cycles that for some people are regular, and regular would be between 21 and 35 days, on average 28 days. And that would be just cycling hormones. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. Then from the reproductive years, we enter into this stage roughly about the late 30s, early 40s. And this is called the perimenopausal years. This is when our hormones are fluctuating. And I have to say, a lot of people come to my clinic specifically. So I do a lot of weight management and performance optimization. And people come to my clinic a lot starting perimenopause, especially because the hormones are all over the place. And periods can be unpredictable and so on. And we're going to dive deep into this space as well. Then the third stage that we're going to talk about today is what we call postmenopause or menopause. And that's after the hormones have settled down. You no longer have periods. And so they have to have stopped for at least 12 consecutive months. And then you're kind of in this stable state of hormones. So let's dive in and we'll start with premenopause. So you're going to see here, this is a graph that's showing three different sets of hormones, and we're really going to focus on the yellow and the blue. And the yellow is estrogen, and the blue is progesterone, and the green in the back is luteinizing hormone, otherwise known as LH. So here at the beginning is the first space where we're going to start, and that's when you're having your period. So day one of your period starts this cycle. And then you can see the estrogen starts rising after that initial time, right? And this is the time when your body is having a lot of fun. So you feel great after your period. And the estrogen is rising. Your hair is like fabulous. You're having great skin, hair, your bones are great. Everything is fantastic in this first half of the cycle. And this is when you can really do a lot of great exercise and, you just feel amazing. Your body is trying to get you ready to release an egg for ovulation. So that's where this green bump happens, and you're going to have ovulation happening. So the egg gets released right after that luteinizing hormone spikes up, and then you're going to have ovulation, which will be the next arrow. Now, between those first two arrows, your body is super insulin sensitive, meaning you have infinite access to your energy. So this is a really wonderful time. And again, feeling really good. Now, once you release that egg where that second arrow is, now your progesterone takes over. And you can see it starts rising pretty quickly. And when that progesterone kicks in, now what you're going to have is a lot of things that help the brain think better, because your body's trying to maintain a pregnancy. So you'll have what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that's for your brain, helps your brain think better, build new neurons. And then GABA is a neurotransmitter that helps create calmness in the mind. And so this is a time when you're feeling really like settled. In addition, progesterone is, of course, trying to prepare you to be able to maintain a pregnancy in case you get the egg gets fertilized. And so it's also going to work on stabilizing your joints, maintaining muscle and bone. It's going to sort of settle your heart rate, and the temperature increases. So people who are working on trying to get pregnant, they might be monitoring their daily temperature. And when they notice that it goes up by about a degree, they know that they've ovulated and it's time for baby making, right? So that's sort of this second half of the cycle. But now, if you do not fertilize that egg, you don't get that egg fertilized, you see the hormones plummet, right, towards the end of the cycle. And that's the third arrow. And that's showing us the next transition, which is when we feel possibly what we might call PMS, or you might be feeling really irritable. This could be a time that some people say, I'm just tearful every time before my period. And this might also include some serious cravings. And we're not talking about cravings for Brussels sprouts. It's usually cravings for things that may not benefit our health. So that's basically the normal cycle for reproductive years. Now we'll go to the next slide. And so there's that same regular cycle. Okay. And you can see the luteinizing hormone, the estrogen, the progesterone. And now one of the challenges that's very common that people come in to see me for in the clinic is related to PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And this is a hormone state, which I'm going to show you in a second. But before we do that, thanks, Rich, for putting up the testosterone there. So you can see the red line. We superimpose that on top of this graph. Now, it's not to scale, meaning there's actually a different range of numbers, but the wave looks exactly the same if you look as the estrogen. It's just a little bit earlier, and that's your testosterone level. That would be in a normal cycling female. So we often think of it as a male hormone, but this is actually also for females. Now, in PCOS, somebody might know or suspect they have PCOS if their periods are irregular, or maybe they don't have them for a really long time. They might have a lot of acne. They might have discoloration of the skin, let's say on the back of their neck or in their skin folds. And sometimes people don't learn of this until they have tried to get pregnant and they experience some infertility because they might not be ovulating appropriately. PCOS can cause a lot of grief, and many people also complain of gaining weight super easily. PCOS causes this disruption in hormones. And so you can see here the luteinizing hormone line, that green line, instead of having this beautiful, funky wave with the peak in the middle where it tells your body, ovulate now, it's just constantly high. You can also see because of that, all the other hormones are a little bit flatter. They don't look like a regular cycle. And so this is PCOS. And while a lot of people will try to control PCOS by using hormones, that doesn't treat the underlying situation that's sort of driving a lot of the challenges people have, whether it's the acne or the irregular periods or infertility. The base of PCOS is about insulin resistance. There we go. All right. So I want to just quickly talk about insulin resistance, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So, insulin is a hormone that your body produces naturally, and it's there to help your body prioritize which fuel it's going to use. So, when insulin is high, you burn blood sugar for fuel. When insulin is low, oh, no, no, no. Yeah. When insulin is low, then you burn fat. So if insulin is high, you cannot burn fat, meaning you don't have access to your fat cells. So this is a very, very important thing because, of course, your body doesn't want to get pregnant if you don't have access to your fat cells and you don't have a reliable source of fuel. So again, insulin resistance means that the insulin stays high for whatever reason. It could be because you have excessive stress, poor sleep. It could be that you're eating a lot of foods that your body cannot tolerate, maybe ultra processed foods and so on. So if you have very high insulin all the time or chronically, then you can develop insulin resistance, meaning your body starts ignoring that high level of insulin. So it's not as effective anymore. All right. So everybody comes in and says, tell me what to do, whether it's to lose weight, feel better, have energy, whatever it is. So again, here's this cycle for a regular cycle individual. So let's think about what's the goal for this person who has a regular cycle. So if you have regular cycles, your goal is to build and maintain muscle and bone. That's really what you're trying to do because that's going to make you feel amazing and it's going to set you up for the whole rest of your life. Now, how do you do that? We'll talk about that in a second. Now, for PCOS, again, remember these cycles. Now, your goal is going to include not only building and maintaining muscle, but also to lower insulin. That's the foundational issue, right? So if you can lower insulin, you may be able to get to where you're cycling more regularly. And in fact, in our clinics, when we take care of individuals and we help them with insulin resistance and PCOS, sometimes we're called a fertility clinic because it's very possible they get fertile very quickly. So just paying attention to that. So let's talk about how do you do this. So if you have regular cycles and you're trying to build and maintain muscle and bone, and also for PCOS, here are the things that we can do. So first, shorter fasts during the times of the arrows. And then if you are still hungry or you're eating your proteins and vegetables and you're still feeling a little bit hungry and you want to have some more whole food carbs, that would be good. Just stick them at the end of the meal and that will actually work better for you and be satiating, meaning satisfying. During the in-between arrow times, you can have longer fasts. Your body can tolerate a lot more. We put the little green circle in front because that's the color of exercise or nutrition for the Zero app. So that's why that's there. And then the next thing that you can do is around exercise. So during that first half of the cycle, that's very yellow, and that's because that's the estrogen dominance part of the cycle. You can really do a lot of things. So, that intense workout, the longer exercise, the high intensity interval training, these are a great time to really boost that and build that up. And then again, in the second half of the cycle, you may want to do things that also work your joints and stretch out your body and allow you to really build maybe endurance and a little bit lower intensity. So, it might not be so high intensity, but that would be a better time. And again, during the times where you see the arrows, those transition points, you want to allow your body to really be nourished and be able to transition smoothly. Sleeping is always beneficial. The circadian rhythm, which is how your body sort of cycles, not only works for sleep, but it's for your hormones. So if you're not sleeping well or your sleep gets disrupted, it's very easy for the hormones and the sleep to just kind of go all over the place. And we'll talk a little bit about that during the perimenopause time. And then finally, you want to make sure you have some restoration. So that's the integrated uh, ways that you can find time for leisure time and the hobbies you love. And a lot of people are very busy. They're great, with work or school or life. And sometimes, it's important to make sure that you're also having fun along the way, even as you're building up your life. Now, with PCOS, you're going to have a few extra things that you can focus on. So, we've got some tools for you for here as well. So, with regards to the fasting, a really beneficial way to fast to improve the PCOS hormone cycles is to consider fasting for a little bit longer duration, maybe 16, 18 hours. For 2 to 3 days per week. And some people do longer fasts than that. We're not going to talk about that today, but that would be another way that people will start training their body to be able to lower that insulin so that you can start cycling again. Another thing that's helpful is to limit the sugars and ultra processed foods because, again, that spikes the insulin, and the insulin being high is actually going to aggravate PCOS because, of course, we're trying to lower insulin. Fasted exercise. This again reduces insulin levels. So, what we mean by fasted exercise is if you have fasted, whether you're intentionally fasting or not, but you haven't eaten in many hours, and then you exercise before your next meal, you're going to be doing fasted exercise, which means you're burning fat for fuel. Consistent sleep schedule? Absolutely. This is even more so. If you're not getting adequate sleep, your insulin levels will tend to stay high because you cannot reduce that stress level very well overnight, and the cortisol stays high. Cortisol is your stress hormone level. And when cortisol is high, it causes weight gain specifically around the waist, which causes more insulin resistance, which makes PCOS more aggravated. Rich, any thoughts, any additions here?
Biggest ones are going to be specific to PCOS. Really getting that insulin in control. The the fasting is certainly going to help. If you can stack fasted exercise, that's going to be absolutely wonderful. It will help you become more insulin sensitive, but it actually allows your muscles to take glucose without insulin even being needed out of the bloodstream. It kind of helps that naturally take place without having to have that added assistance from insulin to manage your blood glucose levels. So, take advantage of exercise when you can. Absolutely.
Exactly. And anybody who's taking birth control pills, these cycles don't match the birth control pill cycles, right? So that's another thing to just know. If you're on a hormonal contraceptive pill or IUD or an implantable, it's going to look different than this. Obviously, this is a without hormone treatment.
I was like, it was staggering seeing the differences, like the waveforms associated with a regular cycle versus a birth control kind of managed cycle is very different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was super surprised to see that.
Yeah.
All right.
So, all right,
On to perimenopause.
let's do it.
All right. I know we had a couple
All right.
questions that were getting towards
Good.
that end of
Good.
the
We're going to be
cycle.
all over it. All right. So here are our perimenopause hormone, the drawing of the hormones there. Okay. So on the left hand side, where you see the arrow going from left to right, you can see the hormones are fluctuating. They're kind of all over the place. There is not any predictable rhythm. Periods can become dysregulated. People have a lot of complaints during this time, and some people breeze through it. Right. So we've got a wide range of ways you can experience perimenopause, and we want to show you how you can maximize this time period so that it's most comfortable for you and you can come out of it relatively unscathed. Some of the most common complaints are related to hot flashes, sleep, and weight gain around the waistline. So, this is really important. So, I want to explain what some of these things are that occur. Now, at the beginning of perimenopause, your hormones are again fluctuating. It's progesterone, the blue one, that starts dropping first. And when that happens, again, remember progesterone created BDNF, which helps with your brain. It's like brain fertilizer, and it gave you GABA, which gave you calmness. So we were like, so awesome, right? And then what happens? Boom, you're like starting to lose it, and people will come in and say, I think I might have, yeah, some problems with my memory, or I'm having some kind of brain fog. I can't seem to learn as well. Or they might say, I've never been anxious, but I'm starting to have some anxiety. I'm not sure what that's about. And that's actually because of the drop in the progesterone. In addition, you'll see that bones and joints and muscle aches can become a little bit more common because those were improved when you had progesterone. And when you don't, you are actually a little bit more at risk. So if you're working out and doing some very high momentum type of activity when your progesterone is low, then it's easier to have a joint injury. Muscle aches also increase. The body temperature fluctuates. Boy, don't we know it. So, and then what happens is after your progesterone's been dropping, your estrogen starts dropping. Gosh darn it. So, serotonin, remember that's the feel good chemical, like, what a lot of these medications like fluoxetine will give extra serotonin for the brain, which makes us feel good at the beginning of the cycle if you're cycling. Perimenopause, it's down. It doesn't feel so good. So, people say, I don't know, I'm usually a cheerful person, but I'm sometimes really irritable. In addition, we know that estrogen helps with your blood vessels, your bones, your skin, and now you don't have that support so much. So, this is when cardiovascular disease starts increasing, osteoporosis risks start increasing here, and blood pressure starts increasing. And don't we know about the dry skin and sort of the feeling of that saggy skin, the wrinkles, right? This is a time we become hyper aware of it because we don't have the support of estrogen to keep us, feeling that plumpness in our skin and our tissues. And again, the blood vessels become less pliable, meaning they don't respond as well. So they get stiffer, and that's what causes the higher blood pressure. So, understanding these are hormones that are causing this. So, we're going to talk about what to do. So, first of all, what are the goals here? Let's look. So, our goals are to manage the symptoms. You want to also make sure you're managing weight because this is the time period that people start gaining a lot of weight. Because remember, estrogen keeps us insulin sensitive. So when you take away estrogen, you become insulin resistant much more easily. So we want to kind of do what we were doing if you had PCOS, lower that insulin, right? You want to do things to protect your bone, joints, and muscle, and you want to build routines for longevity. So let's see what some of those options are over here on the right-hand side. These are the actions we recommend, and that can help you. Number one, consider different fasting patterns. During this time, again, you're going to be trying to lower insulin, so you might try a couple of longer fasts. You might try alternate day fasting. There's so many different ways to do this, and we have all these different options in our app that you can learn more about. You want to avoid sugar and alcohol, especially after sunset, and especially if you want to sleep well. So, if you can do these things, just that alone, you're going to improve your weight, you're going to improve your hot flashes, and you're going to improve your sleep just by avoiding sugar and alcohol close to bedtime. The second thing is about exercise. This is your number one priority because, like we talked about earlier, perimenopause, you're losing bone muscle unless you do something about it. So, this is the time you want to keep what you've got. Strength training, work on the muscle and bones. This should be weight bearing, this should be strength training. Also, you want to make sure that you are able to do steady state activity for your metabolic health, your joints, your blood pressure, your mental well-being. And steady state activity might be walking. It could be, anything that's just kind of a rhythmic, steady state activity. Next, you want to make sure that you're doing things to improve your sleep transition. You're going to have disrupted sleep during this time, some people more than others, and it's okay. Your body's designed to be able to handle this. You just want to do the best you can to give yourself space to be able to sleep. So some people are like, well, I couldn't sleep. So I got up and I started doing all this work, and now I'm training my brain to stay up all night. So allow yourself protected time to rest, even if you don't actually fall asleep. And then use restorative activities to manage stress. This can be a time where you might feel the stress a little bit more because you don't have that progesterone to kind of calm things down, right? So the anxiety can be a little bit amped up. This is a really, really awesome time that nature has created for us to learn how to manage stress if you haven't figured it out yet. And so this is a really, really valuable tool. It brings down that cortisol. Again, cortisol causes weight gain around the waist. Rich, anything to add here?
I would like to potentially double click in the direction of investing in sleep routines and that sleep transition.
Hmm.
Um, Not everyone has sauna, but there's really good research on sauna in terms of that being a pre sleep routine to help kind of get your core body temperature to adjust, and cooling the body is important to getting that sleep transition to take place more efficiently. Um, Maybe some meditation, but kind of taking a look at your sleep hygiene or your pre sleep routine. What does it look like? Maybe cleaning that up a bit. This is a really good time to invest in that, just because, as you mentioned, the research suggests that the quality of sleep may fall off. You may have more wake intervals or more fragmented sleep. This is a great time to try to improve your transition to sleep so you don't kind of have fragmented sleep plus kind of this, you know, late sleep onset that is a struggle as well during this specific time period.
Yeah, so true. That's awesome.
We
All
have at least
right.
one question on postmenopause. So,
Oh,
um,
good. Well,
just
because
yeah,
we're going
hopefully.
there. So postmenopause, some people sort of pathologize it, make it sound like there's something wrong with somebody for going through menopause, but it's actually a normal process, right? So after perimenopause, when your hormones are fluctuating, thank goodness they finally settle down, right? And in this space, in many parts of the world, they call this the second spring, or they'll have other terms which make it sound like it's basically your second chapter when you're no longer responsible for taking care of small children, or doing all of the busy work trying to build your career or learn new things. You get to step into who you are, and you get to really contribute and build yourself during this time. So this is a really fun time. The hormones settle down and your body establishes a new norm. So let's talk about the goals here. So, really, this is about from this time period, you want to make sure you're maintaining your independence and freedom. It's the number one thing people come and ask me for. They say, I do not want to end up dependent or not able to do the things I want to do. And sometimes that happens, and it's never too late to turn that around, right? So, we can find ways to get a little bit better, even if it's not perfect. So, we can also work on avoiding frailty. This is about being able to move, having balance, having muscle mass. So if you got a cold, you could recover relatively quickly. This is about protecting the mind, managing the cortisol, that stress hormone, right? That we talked about earlier that causes weight gain around the waist, and lowering insulin. Again, that dietary pattern and behavior pattern, fasting, exercise that help lower insulin. And then this is the fun part, find that meaning in life, right? Lift the next generation, contribute to sharing your wisdom. You've learned a lot in your years, right? And so now you get to pass that on and make sure other people get to learn from your wisdom. And we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So this is a time you get to be the giant that you get to help other people. So moving forward, here are the things that you can do post menopause that will help during this time. Early time restricted feeding or eating, depending on if you're talking about labs or not. But early time restricted feeding is doing a fasting protocol that starts maybe earlier in the evening. So you don't eat as late. Some people will do fasting protocols earlier in their hormonal stages where it goes later at night because they might have work or other responsibilities. During this time period, you can kind of shift it forward. And we know that changes lab values, it changes waistlines, it changes metabolic health. And so this is a really good thing. So shift your eating window earlier in the day. Prioritize protein, fiber, as in vegetables, and hydration. So if you're having protein, vegetables, and you're staying hydrated, you are crushing it. And the thing is, if you are on any medications that cause you to, diurese, basically pee off all the extra fluid, you need to make sure you maintain hydration because it's very easy to become dehydrated as we get older because we hold less water unless, we do something about it. Relationships. So you saw in the others, we had exercise was number 2. Here, we put in these engage relationships and engage with the community. This is one of the most important things you do in your postmenopausal time. We know from studies that longevity is about being connected to others. And so, yes, all the other things matter, but we found that your relationships are going to be one of the most powerful components for longevity. And why is that? Well, relationships increase oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that we know about for breastfeeding. We know about it during labor and delivery. But oxytocin actually increases when there's warmth, bonding with other people. And oxytocin is one of the few hormones that the more you have of it, the more you get. So it's a positive reinforcing cycle. And the great thing about oxytocin is it directly counters the effect of cortisol, right? So this is why relationships are going to be super, super important, having deep connected relationships. Leisure and recovery, always a good thing. You might need a little bit more recovery from any kind of exercise or anything that you do. That's okay. That's all right. Next would be the exercise, work the muscle and bone. Again, you want to make sure you're staying independent, that you've got the functional mobility and balance, you have muscle mass. So you have to actually use it or you're going to lose it. So whatever you can do, do it. And even if it's like, oh, that would be a little hard, if you can do it now, you better keep doing it so that you can keep doing it. So that's super important. And then again, sleep is always important. And we know that sleep deprivation can lead to cognitive decline and dementia. So it's really important that you get your sleep because when you sleep, it's basically like your brain is cleaning house. And that's going to be the time that the lymphatic system activates and it's really clearing out all the debris and breakdown products in your brain. Rich, what do you have?
Um, I just wanted to maybe highlight that early time restricted feeding piece. A lot of times in the research, they'll kind of make this time frame, start at 6 to 8 a.m. So you kind of, you prioritize breakfast, whereas more or less traditional intermittent fasting, you kind of think of it like you're going to start 11 or noon and kind of start the day with lunch. And that's your first meal or your fast breaker. With the early time restricted feeding, you kind of shift your dinner earlier or you kind of, have this bigger later lunch. And the results are quite impressive, actually. Most uh, robust changes in insulin resistance and improving insulin sensitivity, uh, especially in people that are healthy, seems to require that you actually are shifting towards that ETRF model. The body naturally becomes a little bit more insulin resistant at night. That's kind of why late night snacking can be a problem. So that's another thing to think of, and that's one thing I wanted to make sure we highlight again. It may even be important for the premenopausal or PCOS cohort. I know we talked about really bringing down insulin resistance and addressing that as an underlying problem. ETRF might be a good option there as well.
Okay, so let's just summarize. This is going to be the money slide, all right, with all the information from all the slides on one. Here is our lifetime, okay, as women. So you can see the hormone cycling across our lifespan. And so in the premenopause years, we are going to really focus on syncing our health habits with our cycles, right? So we talked about the arrows. We talked about the arrows were the transition times when you want to take it a little bit easier. with the shorter 12 to 14-hour fasts, and then being careful with carbs and sugars if you have PCOS. The first half of the cycle is going to be better for that intense endurance, high intensity interval training. The second half of the cycle, you're going to want to really boost that less intense, more of the mobility exercises. Protect that sleep time. This is a time that it's really easy to go, and cut into our sleep. A lot of people say, oh, but I love to stay up really late and I still have to wake up early for work or school. And this is a time to really pay attention to that sleep so you can have some good cycling of your hormones and de-stress with the hobbies you enjoy. Again, bringing down the cortisol, training your body. You can have acute high cortisol. Absolutely. Your body knows how to handle that. The human body's designed for that. It is not designed for chronically forever high cortisol. And that's what we're talking about. So when you take a break or you get some oxytocin from connecting with somebody, then it brings down the cortisol. Then you can go right back into the high cortisol state and you will be fine. It's just you got to have that recovery time. Perimenopause and postmenopause is the insulin resistant time. It's very, very easy for your body to get into an insulin resistant state. So premenopause with PCOS for sure. Peri and post, we're talking about you have to be aware of insulin resistance. You know if you have insulin resistance if your waistline is increasing. Manage your symptoms and your stress. You're going to work on using shorter fasts if you are having high stress. Avoid sugar and alcohol at nighttime. This is specifically helpful for hot flashes, sleep for sure, and for your weight. Exercise, strength, weight bearing, stretch, endurance, everything that you want you to be able to do later, build it now because otherwise it's very easy to lose it in this time period. Invest in your pre-sleep routine. Again, as Rich said, things like the sauna, that's going to be super helpful. And then restorative habits to decrease stress. And then we've got postmenopause. Again, this is that second spring. And in this time period, we are really trying to focus on our goals of strength and independence. Consider early time restrictive feeding, prioritize protein, fiber, and hydration. Again, remember the oxytocin in relationships, that is super powerful. Mobility, strength, and balance exercises, and get plenty of sleep to keep your mind young. So those are the most important things, and this would be the snapshot to take right now.
Wonderful. All right. I did want to mention, and I kind of failed to mention it before, with the pre-sleep routine. I know I mentioned sauna right off the bat. I understand no one, not everyone has a sauna. I don't own a sauna. I did
Me
see a
neither.
really cool one recently. It was like this more fabric and kind of budget-friendly one that looked really interesting. I was going to look into that a little bit more. If you don't have a sauna, you want to just do like a warm bath. It does have a similar effect. I've looked at some research there. So if you were interested in that as a possible pre-sleep routine or a hack to help yourself get to sleep better or have better sleep transition, I just wanted to point that out real quick and allow some time for some snaps or some snips to happen or screenshots to happen. But now that we've got that, I think I'd love to answer some questions if you would, Dr. P. All right. So I'm going to end share for now and we'll get to some questions. All right. We had a lot of live questions. I might want to, yeah, if you want to jump into a few of those, some of them were directly relevant. I'm looking at one right now. That question is, what fasts are recommended for postmenopausal women? I know we had it on that slide for everyone, but I'd love to hear your thoughts there when you're working with patients and what do you kind of direct them towards as a good start point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, fasting is very personal. Like which ones work best for you is very personal depending on your schedule. And so, I'll give you kind of a few things to think about. First of all, the entire time that you're fasting, you have to be in control and feel good about it. So if it's feeling super awful, that's not a good time to fast. If you are recovering from a cold or some kind of surgery or a medical problem, also you have to pay attention because there might be other reasons that you need to be fueling like regularly. If you are, however, not having anything like that going on and you want to introduce some fast during menopause, you have the option to do any of the fasts that are like in the Zero app, because your body can tolerate a variety of different kinds. So if you're trying to lose weight, you probably want to go maybe closer to 16 hours or 18 hours, something like that for a fast would be helpful. Or you can do alternate day fasting where you might decrease your calories significantly, meaning usually the way people do that is they eat just like maybe one meal every other day, something to that effect. You can also do a very sort of a variable one where you might say 2 days of the week you're going to eat uh, much less, maybe one meal. And then the other days you might continue with your regular eating routine. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And usually I throw out these ideas and somebody will sit and say, I could do that. This other one I can't. And if you decide, yeah, I want to do the 2 days a week, two non consecutive days of the week, you might build up to that. So if you're trying to get to one meal on those two non-consecutive days of the week, you may decide, okay, first I can get down to two meals on that day, and then next week I'm going to get down to one meal. And so it doesn't have to be all at once, but you can build towards it. What are your thoughts, Rich?
Um, Loving all those thoughts. I had some added support to provide here. The University of Illinois Chicago, which is kind of in your neck of the woods. There's been two really good studies. There is limited data pertaining to postmenopausal women and fasting, but there have been two really good studies. One was 2021, one was 2022. I think it was actually the same cohort, but they have two different publications, slightly different markers that they were going after in these two different publications. They saw that in postmenopausal women, they had great adherence to an 18-6 or a 24, so either 18 hours fasting or 20 hours fasting, which is actually like those are considerable fasts. Usually we recommend in the 12 to 18 hour range, but they showed in 8 weeks they lost somewhere between 3 and 4% of their body weight, so they had successful weight loss. Their adherence was a little over 6 days a week on average, so across that 8 weeks. And looking at some of the hormone data, their testosterone levels pretty much stayed stable. Their estrogen and their progesterone level, they both stayed stable as well. You might expect that because of the postmenopausal scenario going on there. There was a small decrease, it looked like, in DHEA, but both of those studies were super cool to read. They did kind of this comparison. It was premenopausal women and postmenopausal women in those two particular studies. I don't know why no perimenopausal women. I know actually to date there's been no studies that I'm aware of on perimenopause. I'd love to see that change in the very near future. That would be wonderful. But you can certainly, adopt fasting as a habit. You can have a lot of success in postmenopause if you're interested in making fasting a habit for you, and it can help you if you're, especially if you're interested in weight loss and retaining lean mass, losing fat mass.
About postmenopause is, again, you're trying not to lose muscle. So if you are doing some extended fasts or you're going down to one meal in a day, or even if you're not, you really have to make sure you're getting your protein. So as we get older, it's harder to absorb protein and it's harder to build muscle if you don't have adequate protein and you're not exercising. So you literally have to do both. That's super, super important.
Saw a related question on the postmenopausal women. Then we'll transition away from postmenopausal women just temporarily, just to make sure we're being as inclusive as possible after this question. But as a good follow-up, how to fast without losing lean muscle mass for postmenopausal women.
Yeah, exercise. I mean, weight bearing,
Yeah.
muscle loading exercise, period. That is the most important thing to be doing, because you will lose muscle mass otherwise, because that's the default setting if we don't do something about it. What's really cool is they also have done studies on people who are much older, like 70s, 80s, and they found if you are exercising and doing strength training at that age, you build muscle and you get strong. So it's not over, right? So even if you're like, I've never worked out a day in my life and you're 75 years old and you say, I want to start now, let's do it. I mean, you want to have somebody to help you and make sure your balance is okay and your form is okay. You might require more recovery days than you would have when you were 20, but that's okay. Your body still will respond and you will get very strong. So it's really quite exciting. And that is something that it's so fun.
I second all that with the exercise. That's going to be huge. Um, Making sure you're getting, on the other side of your fasting window, on your eating window, taking care of calorie intake and protein intake specifically, making sure you're getting enough of that throughout your day. Um, you can kind of whatever you can fit it into however meals, if you're having 2 meals a day or 3 or 4, or if you need some snacks or even some protein supplementation, that is a priority after age 30, as Dr. P just mentioned. The default setting, if you're not resistance training or strength training, is you're going to begin losing strength and muscle mass beginning as early as 30 years old. So
But you don't
definitely
have to.
exercise. Yeah, you do not have to. The research on
Right.
that is also incredible. That the amount of gains you can have in that kind
Yeah.
of later years of life.
I also want to get to this question by Valerie. If trying to reduce cortisol to optimize fat loss, should women limit high intensity interval training workouts to 2 to 3 days per week max, and then do low impact workouts like Pilates, bar, and a walking on the other days of the week? Rich, do you want to take that on first?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're trying to reduce cortisol, um, you want to optimize your fat mass. I can see, and I know Dr. P mentioned this, but acute cortisol spikes are adaptive. If they're acute, they're temporary. So you have your HIIT workout or your exercise, that's going to be a mild stress on the body. Fasting is even a stress on the body, and it will shift your cortisol levels. um, the important part is that it's temporary, and you will punctuate your exercise, you will punctuate your fast, and you will allow some recovery, you'll allow some time for a refeed. With respect to the HIIT workout specifically, I know there is some conversations or some research around becoming, kind of like this adrenal fatigue that can manifest if you're doing too much HIIT workout, and you're also, stressed at work and you have other things going on because, everyone does. Everyone's got family and relationships and work things going on, in addition to training really intensely too many times a week. And that's going to be a little bit individual. You're going to have to, kind of, if you feel flat or kind of you have this lethargy, you're going to want to check into that and maybe reduce some of your HIIT workouts. 2 to 3 times a week probably isn't that big of a deal. You can kind of interchange like the HIIT workouts for your strength workouts in some cases. And we usually recommend, your strength or your resistance training would be 2 to 3 times a week as well. So then that I think that split that Valerie mentioned was going to work out actually quite well if you're doing 2 to 3 sessions that are more HIIT or strength or kind of this anaerobic focus, and then you're going to be doing a little bit more of the continuous lower intensity exercise on the other days of the week that you choose to get in the gym. I don't know how many days that might be though. However, if you can exercise 5 to 7 days a week, that would be ideal. So hopefully you have 3 to 4 other days in there that you're doing more of the continuous exercise.
Yeah, it depends on the goals and what your exercise baseline is. So some people aren't able to do high intensity interval training, and that's okay too. So what you're trying to do is whatever it is you do, over time it should get easier and better, and that you can progress. If you're feeling like over time you get worse and worse, and you have injuries, or you're like no longer wanting to exercise ever again because you've hit the wall, like that's too much. So you want to really pay attention. And sometimes it helps to have a partner. So that's why trainers can be useful. Logging whether it's in a journal or the app or whatever, that's really helpful because you can kind of see, okay, I'm getting better. I'm getting, you might need some extra sleep for the first 2 weeks, but you should be noticing that the workouts get a little bit easier. And as we get older, we might need more days of recovery. So 1 day a week, I think of as a maintenance, and 2 days a week is progress. So, with regards to strength training, so this split looks okay if this is something that you're comfortable with. If you're though not used to exercising, this might be a little bit much to start with. So, start where you are and move forward. Yeah, totally. Hmm. Yeah. But yeah, the spike of cortisol is okay as long as you have recovery. That the key is recovery after a spike. There are a couple questions. There was a what is steady state activity? I just want to hit that before. And, that's anything that we might call aerobic activity. It could be walking. It could be riding a bike. It could be swimming. It could be, walking the dog, right? So, pretty much anything that's something that you could sustain for a while, that would be okay. When can we expect menopause symptoms to get better? Oh, yeah. If I had the magic wand for that where I could predict, it'd be awesome. Unfortunately, it's different for each person, but you can make it much easier to tolerate the symptoms. There is hormone replacement therapy that some people, it's not called hormone replacement therapy now, it's called hormone therapy. There are hormone treatments that people sometimes will choose if it's really rough. And again, another person, Lisa, said, I need help to reduce hot flashes. Oh dear, I know. So um, that actually, what's been shown is as you reduce fat mass on the body, it reduces hot flashes. So because it's often coming from the estrogen called estrone that comes from our fat cells, which is different than the estrogen that comes from our ovaries. So that tends to create some of those hot flashes, which is super not fun. All right. Been there, done that. All right, let's see. I've been fasting for 3 months. I'm vegan. Just started perimenopause 5 months ago with 1 month with cycle. I've not lost any weight. I'm at a loss. Went on hormone replacement and actually gained weight. So I went off the hormone replacement. Oh gosh, that is so frustrating. Absolutely. So it's very difficult because vegan means that there's no animal products at all. So all the proteins have to come from a plant. When proteins come from a plant, sometimes it's not as bioavailable, meaning it's hard for the body to absorb and utilize. And as we get older, that can be more so. And so we just have to be careful that you're getting complete proteins. And so you want to make sure you're getting complete proteins. And when you start the hormone replacement, it's possible that you were building up muscle, right? And bone. And so that could increase a little bit of the weight. Depends on where the weight is landing, if it's around the waistline or not. So that'd be something to pay attention to. And again, this is a great time to think about using a scale that has a body composition. And they have those at gyms, they have those with exercise centers and various places. So you can also buy one online, which is pretty inexpensive. For under $100, you can get a body composition scale and kind of see, what's increasing. Is it the fat mass or the muscle mass? And it's helpful to kind of see how that works.
Let's see. Did you see one that jumped out at you, Dr. P, or do you want me to toss one in?
They're all so good. I'm trying to like answer as many as we can. We also have to get to our tips from our people.
Yeah. How about one more, and then we'll make sure we fit the tips in.
Okay. Do you
Then,
have a favorite question or a question that you want to answer or that we want to go into here?
there's one that I think we could definitely fit, and then
Okay. Let's
spoiler
go.
alert, we might stay a little late.
Yeah,
Answer a few more
let's
questions, but yeah, there's
let's
one
do
we can
after
definitely fit
hours
in.
after. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
before we kind of get to our 10 tips from zero members, this question was, how much minimum protein do postmenopausal women need?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, surprise, surprise, Rich picked the protein question.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Do you want to answer that?
I'm interested to get your thoughts. I
Yeah.
have a more general recommendation of 1 gram per pound per day is a good target to start with. But I'd love to hear if you have anything specific for postmenopausal women that you see and work with more regularly.
I'm in agreement with that. Absolutely. If you are hardcore working out and or you're inconsistent, then if you aim for 1.1 or 1.2 grams per pound, that would be another way to go after that and make sure you're going to hit it on most days. Now that we know that you can actually absorb more protein than we thought, even if you have a day where it's a lot less, you can sort of make it up. And so that's a really important thing to just know.
Yep. Yeah, that was very recent, actually. That study just came out just a few months ago. that showed you
Yeah.
could uh, maximize your protein synthesis with up to 100 grams and over a course of 12 hours or so. It was a really cool study. The previous had been, you're going to max out near 20 grams. So you had to like have your, many little meals and kind of have your protein grazing throughout the day, which, made things like OMAD kind of challenging for folks to get their protein needs met. And it, for people that are fasting and eating less meals in the day, being able to get larger boluses of protein, it's real important. So
And OMAD is 1 meal a day.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you for clarifying it. If you're unfamiliar with OMAD, there's also
Yep.
2MAD, two meals a day. So, all right, we
All
should
right.
definitely try to fit some tricks and tips from Zero members
All
in, if you don't
right.
mind.
10 tips and tricks from Zero members. Number 1, I have found it easier to fast right after my period. Number 2, that is so true. I keep entering my fasts in the Zero app and it has kept me motivated. I am at 1,489 consecutive fasts and my weight has been stable for 3 years now. Woohoo! If I had confetti, seriously. That's awesome. Walking, especially after meals to regulate blood sugar, the most underrated activity. Fasted resistance training and low intensity cardio help maximize fat burning while helping maintain lean muscle. Plus, exercise while fasting has been great for burning stubborn fat. Totally, especially around the waistline. Get an electric kettle. Sometimes a warm drink is the difference between feeling like you're starving and not. If regular black coffee is too bitter, try instant coffee. Oh, so great. The electric kettle, I love mine. Set alarms. That's the most helpful, especially in the beginning. I used to forget to start or stop my clock constantly. And once you get in the rhythm, it becomes a personal goal to get the circle to turn green before eating. I have that same goal. Eating a diet high in protein and fat, zero ultra processed foods, zero seed oils, and zero gluten. Number 8, drink lots of water. Fast the hours that work best for you. Absolutely agree. Number 9, fasting has helped me lose weight for sure. Cutting on sugary food has been my struggle while I am not fasting. And number 10, grab all the handholds you can to establish and maintain a healthy lifestyle. Use zero challenges, soak up all the fasting info available. It's okay to start with simple fasts and work your way up to longer fasts. Find fasting buddies on the same journey. That's what we all are here. This is so awesome and so real. I love all these tips. Fabulous.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you. I'm not sure if these tips were coming from some of you that are present with us today, but it's very possible these were from registrants and attendees that are with us today in today's Zero Live event.
So let's do our quick little summary, and I think then we'll stay after. So anybody who has more questions in here, we want to answer as many as we can. So we will stay for the after hours party. Okay. So, but those of you who we promised 1 hour, I just want to make sure we summarize so that you can close it out. You can go and do what you're going to do. Everybody else will continue on with their after hours party so that we can answer more questions and keep it coming. So, um, we have our takeaways, right? We did our mini medical school. We did the live Q&A. We did some Zero member tips and tricks. And so we just want to remind people maybe these 5 key things to remember. Number 1, hormone flux often requires variation in healthy habits. And so just to understand, your hormones do impact what you're experiencing. Number 2, insulin resistance is an underlying contributor to many reproductive challenges and weight gain around the waistline. So the more you learn about insulin resistance and address it, the better it's going to be. Fasting, a first line habit to improve hormones while improving metabolic health. Fasting is one of the easiest ways to bring down that insulin and improve insulin resistance. Number 4, stack complementary health habits like nutrition, movement, sleep, and restoration, just like we showed you with the different color rings. And at transition points, remember those arrows on the hormone graphs? Or when your stress levels are very high, be kind to yourself and pay attention. You don't have to force yourself to do anything. You want to make it that you're working in alignment with your body, and life happens. So pay attention and give yourself some grace. So those are our key points. And we want to just make sure that with Zero Plus, you can learn how much fasting and other activities are going to affect you, right? So sleep, exercise, food, etc. You can figure out what it is that's going to help you get your insulin low enough that you get into the fat burn mode. And so join Zero Life Friends. Tap into the power of Zero Plus. Share your best tips with each other. Motivate others by posting your progress at Zero Longevity, hashtag start at zero, and become a Zero Life regular. Come and join us. We'll be here again in 2 weeks. Next time, Monday. Oh, no, Thursday. I think it's Thursday, April 15th. Is it Thursday?
I believe it's the 15th.
Yeah, so it's on the 15th.
Double check.
Yeah, we'll confirm. But no, it is on April 15th. We may not know what day of the week we're talking about, but basically the topic is going to be on fasting and fat burning at any age. So we're going to dive actually even deeper and continue to add these tips and share each other's success stories and other tips.
Confirmed, April 15th will be a Monday. We hope to see you there.
Okay.
We're so excited for it.
Me too. All right. Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah, if you'd like to hang around, we are going to address a couple of questions. There was at least one additional one, more of a clarifier, I suppose.
Okay.
If you want to maybe start there, Dr. P, if that's cool.
Okay. I'm going to start at the very top, but yeah, put up the question that you're looking at.
All right.
I want to make sure I'm getting the ones that first asked.
From Diane, I've been told the amount of protein is 1 to 1.2. I imagine that's grams per kilogram, not pounds. Confused in what's causing this big difference. So that is, you've probably heard right. There are, kind of the standard recommendation, or the RDA for protein, if we kind of start there, is 0.8 grams per kg. It's woefully inadequate, according to much recent research, especially if you're interested in health and longevity. Now that's the RDA. That's, you don't want to go under that for sure. But most of the research that I've seen, especially in health and longevity, especially if you're 40, 50 years old or older, you should be looking to at least double the RDA. So that puts you at 1.5, 1.6 grams per kg. There are now, taking another step, if you are interested in weight loss, or you're actively pursuing weight loss and your strength training, if you're trying to maintain as much lean mass as possible, or you're intermittent fasting, a lot of that research might then look even, you kind of get another addition on top of that. So there's been studies where they've shown people eating, and we're not supporting this per se, but there's studies out there that would recommend 3.3, 3.4, or even up to 4.4 is the highest I've seen in literature, grams per kg. We selected 1 gram per pound. It's a nice, easy way to kind of approximate your protein goal for the day. Makes the math easy. It allows it's a little bit higher than that 1.6 grams per kg, which would be more like 0.7 grams per pound if you want the conversion. So it's a little bit higher than that. Allows you that wiggle room. I think Dr. P mentioned, 1.1, 1.2 grams per pound. If you, maybe are inconsistent with protein. I know protein for me is like, if I haven't pre-prepped my protein, I usually will have a hard time like making sure I get enough to meet my protein goal for the day. So hopefully that helps clarify. If it doesn't, please drop something in the comments, and I can explain a little bit more, try to type something for you real quick.
Hi, Diane. So the question is awesome because there's a lot of different comments. And in the past, the recommendations for protein were much less. So even 1 to 1.2 per kilogram sounds like a lot more than it was when it was 0.8. But we know as we get older, the protein needs to be able to stimulate muscle regeneration and synthesis has to be a little bit higher. And so what I recommend is about 1 gram per pound of weight that you want to be. Okay, so if you are carrying around a lot of excess weight, you might not want to maintain that excess weight level. And so you pick the weight that you would like to be and go for about 1 gram per pound. And that will give you a really nice number to aim for. So great question.
Awesome.
All right, so let's see.
You said you're going to start from the other side and kind of try to make our way down?
Top down.
Yeah,
what do you think?
That's cool. I like that.
See how many we can pump through. Okay. Christy, A question regarding caffeine intake and how it may help or hurt hormone fluctuations. During fasting, my caffeine intake increased a lot. Oh, totally get it. Rich, any thoughts on there?
Um, I've seen that too. I've not seen great, one-to-one research like intermittent fasters drink a lot more caffeine, but that's anecdotally what I've experienced. That's what I've heard from almost everybody. And it doesn't matter what the topic is of our Zero Live event, we are going to talk about coffee and caffeine. I guarantee you every time. Um, so caffeine, coffee, it kind of goes hand in hand. To me, I see it as kind of an enhancer of your fast because it's thermogenic with the caffeine. That's going to help you increase your energy burn rate. But caffeine and coffee, some of the polyphenols in there, actually also are lipolytic. So they will help you break down and mobilize more fat to kind of enhance fat burning a little bit. In terms of cutting back on caffeine intake, I don't have direct research on that either. I know myself, I've started taking like my standard mug and I will fill it up halfway instead of when I fill it, and I seems to cut my coffee intake just by doing that, because I know I'm only going to go get more coffee 2 or 3 times a day. So if I have 3 full cups, it's much different than 3 half cups. So that's what I've done. Dr. P, you might have something more enlightened to share.
Well, with regards to the hormone fluctuations, it doesn't, as far as I know, there's no evidence that shows it helps or hurts hormone fluctuations. And if there was that evidence, I don't know it. So, but what I can say is for some people, it does affect hormones. So if it depends on how you take your caffeine, right? So caffeine as coffee that's black is very different than coffee that's sweetened and, has all sorts of flavorings and so on. So it kind of depends. And it also depends, is it um, a carbonated beverage with caffeine? Is it an energy drink, right? So there's lots of different ways to do this. If we're talking about caffeine from coffee and you're drinking black coffee, the only thing you really want to pay attention with regards to your hormones is if your sleep is disrupted or you are having experiences of more anxiety. Caffeine may be aggravating that during the times, perimenopausally, especially when your hormones are kind of fluctuating. So just be aware of that and you might try cutting back. I don't think there's any evidence that shows you have to do that or that there's a direct one-to-one correlation, but anecdotally from, a lot of women that I take care of, that seems to make a difference. And what I have found is some people find caffeine sort of builds up in the system. So they're fine with a certain amount for a certain period of time. And then after a while, they start feeling like they can't sleep as well, or they have palpitations, or they don't feel as good. They might have like a stomach, doesn't feel so great. Those cases, sometimes it helps to sort of backtrack a little bit and just rein it in. And heartburn might be another symptom too. All right. Hope that answered the question, Christy. All right. Kayla, these studies you're referencing are all conducted on women.
Um,
This is a great time to talk about the proportion of studies on
yeah.
women versus men
Okay.
for
Yeah,
fasting.
I've looked into this because this is a recurring question. I was super excited for a potential opportunity to talk a little bit more about this. Um, we've recently had a lot of questions about, where do I get great research, or what studies are specifically on women or related to women in fasting. So first thing, we've got 9 to 10 dedicated articles just in Zero in our content library. That are focused on women, hormones, health associated with fasting. That's a great place to start. But in addition to that, there's a recent 2020 review, because the thought, I guess, is like, and it's correct in many ways, that women have been underrepresented in research for decades, or you know um, and that seemed to start to change in the late 1980s. There were some policy changes at the NIH. Then there was actually a law in place by 1993. So this 2024 umbrella review, it was published in the Lancet recently, right around St. Patrick's Day this year. It was a review that focused on fasting, and it looked at basically the history of all fasting research as much as it could, from the inception of PubMed, Web of Science. So basically from 1996 all the way through to January 2024 is when they went through and compiled all the research data. And then I went through it because I really wanted to be able to answer this question. And, are women fairly represented in the fasting literature? Looking at each one of those studies that they provided, in that umbrella review, it was actually around 63.7% of the participants in those studies, in those fasting studies across that time, were female. So it's true that definitely representation wasn't great for many decades, and that's unfortunate. And it's probably the case that that's still the, in some fields, maybe women are less represented. I'm happy to say I was surprised to find, I kind of expected to say, some conclusion after going into that literature might be, there's a lot of work to do and we really need to keep doing more studies that are focused on women. But it doesn't seem that way. It seems a little bit, surprising and awesome that it's a little bit more inclusive, I guess, in the fasting research field. There was another 2023 meta-analysis I looked at. It was 33 different studies from 2000 to 2022. Six of them were males only, or 6 of them were females only. 9 of them were males only, and then 18 of those studies included both males and females. So it's a pretty good split. I'm not sure what studies specifically you're referencing that we pointed out today, but the ones from the University of Illinois Chicago that I mentioned were specifically premenopausal women and postmenopausal women. There was 2 different studies, one from 2021, one from 2022. So definitely, there is really good research specific to fasting that caters to looking at women specifically.
Bottom line, we have equity in fasting research. I love it.
I would love to see more perimenopause research. I
Totally.
would
We need
love
that.
that, because that's the most underrepresented group that I've been able to find in fasting thus far.
Yeah. All right. Aaron has a great question. Trying to burn fat with fasting and limiting carbs, but are carbs necessary for muscle building?
All right. Sorry, I lost the question for a second. I see it now.
Okay.
Do you want to lead off on this one? Is there anything in
Sure.
specific you want to
The
mention?
answer is no. But I mean, we can dive deeper into that. But the answer is no. So actually, some people will cut carbs in order to allow muscle hypertrophy. So it's really about the hormone balance and the nutrients that you have and the loading of your muscles. That's really the big picture. So, Dr. Rich this is your area of expertise. So you can probably speak to the details here.
Yeah, there's plenty of professional athletes. There's plenty of, that type of data. There's also plenty of research data where people, even bodybuilders will have within their periodized training schedule, they will have plenty of low carb periods of time, usually they're associated with a cut where they're trying to specifically reduce fat mass, maintain, hopefully grow more muscle, because that's their sport. That's what they're after all the time. So it can be done. It's, again, progressive overload. If you're unfamiliar with that, you want to make sure that it's a challenge when you're in the gym and when you're lifting weights. It shouldn't be something that's like so routine that it's not going to stress or not going to give your muscles a reason to build up and get stronger. But definitely, you can absolutely build muscle, and you don't have to necessarily pile on the carbs. I would say if you want more carbs, or just put your carbs around your training anyways, and that's another way to help support that.
All right, I have another one for you. What
What
fasts are
fast? Yeah.
recommended for serious triathletes? 2 to 3 hours of training per day. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's we actually have a science writer that works with us who is a triathlete, professional triathlete previously, and so that's a lot of volume. Just I'll start out saying there, and congratulations on being that dedicated and doing that kind of volume every day. My recommendation would be to make sure that whatever fast you opt for, you're able to sustain the calorie needs that you're going to have for doing that type of volume of training. So in all likelihood, you might be looking at something that's like the 12, 14-hour range, a little bit shorter. You can definitely move that around if you have, a deload week, or, you're going to do, a light volume week, or on days that you're not training. If you want to fast a little bit longer, you can do that. But in terms of what fasts are recommended myself, I would say listen to your body, but you're probably looking at something that's going to be on the shorter side in that 12 to 14-hour range.
Yeah, exactly. I would say 12 hours, you want to just do that to set your circadian rhythm. And if it's comfortable, you can go a couple more hours, but you really do have to make sure you're maintaining the protein and caloric needs and the salts, right? So
Yeah.
that's really important too. So just make sure your energy is good. If you're having to like pump caffeine or energy drinks, then you're overdoing it. So you have to be able to manage it, and your
You'll
sleep should also be protected as well. All right, let's go to next question here by Shaima. Are transitions considered the day of, like day one, or a range of days? That is a fabulous question. So it's really a range of days. And so for the menstrual cycle, that follicular stage, which is that estrogen dominant stage at the beginning, is the one that's usually the one that changes like how long your cycle is. So the second half is almost pretty consistent, but that first half is the one that can sort of vary. Your period time is a range of days. So it's not just day one, it's that whole time. But you'll know when you start feeling more energetic and you're like, ooh, I really want to like kick it up a notch. Same thing before your period. For some people, it's like a full week. Some people, it's 3 days. You'll know, but it's really when your hormones start plummeting, you're going to feel that down. And with the ovulation, usually about 1 to 3 days. I sort of anchor around 3 days, but you might be off on a day or so, and it's okay if it's a little bit longer, but you're really trying to just give your body the opportunity to ovulate. So it might be a day or two before that you sort of take it a little bit easier and give yourself a little boost there. So that's that. I think we lost Rich here. So I'll just keep going for a little bit, and then so Valerie has a question: how to determine the proper caloric deficit to burn fat without wreaking havoc on hormones and long-term metabolism? This is such a great question, and I can appreciate this question a lot. So the proper caloric deficit. So so I want to just kind of talk about calories as a general concept. Your body needs fuel, and we call, that the amount of energy it needs is calories. And so in the past, people were told, cut your calories so that you lose weight. And so people can force themselves to eat less for a period of time. And what ends up happening is there's metabolic adaptations if you do that for a prolonged period of time. And what happens is your body then says, oh, you're only going to feed me 1,000 calories or 800 calories. I have to slow down my metabolism, and I have to not do certain things so that I can maintain myself and stay alive at this lower calorie load. And so that's the sort of wreaking havoc on hormones and long-term metabolism. We know that metabolic adaptation lasts possibly forever. And so what you do not want to do is force your body to survive on a lot less calories. What you're aiming for is that you're setting your body so that the insulin comes down. Then you're going to not want to eat as much, and then you can burn the fat on the body. But it's not that you're burning less calories overall in a day. You're actually tapping into your own fuels. So you're not slowing things down. And so in the past, we used to say, oh, metabolism slows as you age. And recent research shows that's not the case. You can have a very fast metabolism at any age, but you have to actually allow that to be. So again, the exercise, the sleep, the stress management, the connecting with others, and most importantly, keeping that insulin cycling so that it comes down at least some of the time so you can tap into those fat cells and get the extra fuel that you're not eating. So that's the answer to that, is eat in a way that your insulin comes down so you're not hungry. That would be super helpful. All right. I don't know if Rich is coming back, and I'm not sure if I should continue on, but I'll answer a couple more questions and see if he comes back and joins us. All right. So Carol has a question. How much time and how often do you recommend in the sauna? I've been doing 30-minute sessions 3 times per week. Is this okay? If you feel well, it's okay. I'm actually not familiar with a specific amount of time that's recommended. What we know is temperature changes that you put your body into and that your body has to then adjust its own temperature has a very significant effect on metabolism, autophagy, or the ability of the body to break down and recover cells. That does happen. So I'm not aware of the specific number of minutes that need to be in there. And that's probably a question that Rich has more of the details on. But I do think that if you feel fine, you're staying hydrated, and you're getting enough salts in your fluids so that you're hydrating when you're replacing everything you sweat out, you should be in good shape. Let's see. Let's go into, I am 44 and I have PCOS and started water fasting for 36-hour periods, 3 non-consecutive days weekly. Will this have a negative impact on my hormones? Ooh, that's a good question. So, we don't really talk too much about extended fasts, and it can be done. I recommend doing that under supervision with a healthcare provider or a physician who understands how to do this safely. The most important thing is that you take into account all the other things going on, and that you can actually get adequate. Your insulin can come down low enough so that you have adequate fuel and so on. So we can talk about extended fast possibly at a future webinar, and that will be specifically what we do. All right. And I think I'll answer one more question. Actually, though, will you post links to the studies? I think we are doing that. And one last question. Let's see. By Ingrid. I'm postmenopausal and feel fine exercising, lifting, running, etc. when fasted, but I am confused that some experts say it's stressful for women after menopause to do intense exercise when fasted. I know you just said it's fine and helps insulin. So this is so great. I love when all of us experts have opinions or thoughts. It's actually fine. Your body is able to do activity, whether or not you're premenopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, when you're fasted, if you are appropriately hydrated and you are otherwise healthy, right? So if you are taking a lot of medications that affect your ability to access fuel, then it might be a little challenging, but you'll know, because if you feel fine while you're exercising, lifting, and running when you're fasting, and that you must be staying well hydrated, and your body has trained to do that. I also want to thank some of our helping producers and background people. B, Marissa, Nick, Jordan is here as well. And Rich was with us shortly. Everybody that came together to help make this happen, we're super grateful, and we're so grateful for all of your time. So come join us. Make sure you pop onto the app and send us a note as well. You can email us. You can send us various messages for our team.